The bright lights of Nova Prime's Central District shone through the windows of the Kim family shuttle as it descended toward the landing pad. Jung Kim looked at his family with pride. His wife Sora sat beside him, checking her appearance one last time in a small mirror. In the back seats, their daughter Minna, 19 years old and sharp as a laser cutter, was explaining something to her younger brother Tai, who at 17 was still growing into his lanky frame. "Remember," June said as the shuttle touched down, "this restaurant is supposed to be the best in 12 star systems. Let's enjoy ourselves tonight." Sora smiled and squeezed his hand. 20 years of building our shipping business. We deserve this celebration. The Kim family had worked hard to get where they were. 3 generations ago, June's grandparents had left Earth when the first colony ships were seeking brave souls to start new lives among the stars. The Kims had started with one small cargo ship, moving supplies between Earth and the new colonies. Now, Kim Interstellar Shipping had a fleet of 30 vessels and contracts throughout human space. As they stepped out of the shuttle, the massive glowing sign of Stellar Eats dominated the skyline. The restaurant was famous across the galaxy. Built on a floating platform above the city, it offered views of both the planet below and the stars above through its clear dome ceiling. "They have food from 15 different planets," Ta said, his eyes wide with excitement. "I read that their chef is a Proximan who has 4 arms and can prepare 4 dishes at once." Mina rolled her eyes but smiled at her brother's enthusiasm. "I'm more interested in their business model. They expanded to all 12 human-settled systems in just 8 years. That's impressive growth." "Always the businesswoman," Sora laughed, straightening Mina's collar. "Tonight is about enjoying ourselves, not studying their operation." They walked across the landing platform toward the restaurant entrance. Other diners were arriving too. Tall blue-skinned Arcturians, a group of tentacled Venlaxians floating slightly above the ground, and various other alien species that humans had met since joining the Galactic Alliance 30 years ago. There were other humans too, but Jun noticed they were mostly light-skinned. The Kim family, with their dark brown skin, stood out. Jun felt a familiar tightness in his chest. Even among the stars, some things hadn't changed from Earth's troubled past. The entrance to Stellar Eats was a massive arch made of shimmering material that changed colors slowly, shifting from deep purple to midnight blue. 2 Arcturians in elegant uniforms stood at the door, checking reservations. "Good evening," Jun said, approaching the taller of the 2 hosts. His name had read Lorix. "Reservation for Kim, party of 4. Lorix looked down at them, his silver eyes narrowing slightly. He tapped on his transparent tablet, scrolling through what must have been the reservation list. "I don't see your name here," Lorix said, his voice cool. Jun frowned and pulled out his own device. "That can't be right. I made the reservation 3 months ago. I have the confirmation right here." He showed Lorix the screen. The Arcturian barely glanced at it. "Perhaps there was a system error. Unfortunately, we are fully booked tonight." Ta stepped forward, pointing through the doorway. "But there are empty tables right there. I can see at least 4 of them." "Those are reserved for premium clientele," Lorix said, emphasizing the word premium in a way that made its meaning clear. Sora placed a hand on Jun's arm, feeling the tension building in him. "Surely there must be some mistake. We've been planning this dinner for months. Today is our 20th wedding anniversary." For a moment, Lorix seemed to hesitate, but then a group of Venlaxians floated up behind them, their tentacles waving gently in the air, jewels glittering on their translucent bodies. "Ah, the Zeknar party," Lorix said, his tone instantly warming. "Your table is ready. Please, follow me." As the Venlaxians moved past the Kim family, one of them whispered to another, just loud enough to be heard, "I thought this place had standards about not admitting primitive species." The second Venlaxian glanced at the Kims and replied, "Especially the darker-toned humans. I've heard they're the least developed of an already underdeveloped species." Tay's hands clenched into fists. Mina's face flushed with anger. But before either could speak, Sora stepped forward. "Excuse me," she said to Lorix, her voice calm but firm. "We have a valid reservation. Your restaurant advertises throughout human space that all galactic citizens are welcome here." Lorix looked uncomfortable now, glancing around as if hoping for someone to rescue him from this situation. "I apologize, but without a reservation in our current system, I cannot seat you. Perhaps you would like to try one of the human restaurants in the lower district." "This is wrong, and you know it," Jun said, keeping his voice steady despite his rising anger. "We will not be treated this way." A small crowd was gathering now. Other diners watched the scene with various expressions. Some seemed uncomfortable, others merely curious, and a few wore looks of satisfaction. An elegant Orion in expensive clothes approached. His skin was deep green, and jewels were embedded in the ridges of his forehead. The name Drex was subtly displayed on a platinum pin on his suit. "Is there a problem here, Lorix?" he asked. "No problem, sir," Lorix replied quickly. "I was just explaining to these customers that we have no available tables tonight." Drex looked at the Kim family with cold yellow eyes. "I see. Well, Lorix is correct. We are fully booked for the next 3 months, actually. Perhaps you should try somewhere more suitable for your kind." Ta stepped forward, but Jun put a hand on his son's shoulder, holding him back. "We understand perfectly," Jun said, his voice so controlled it surprised even his family. "Thank you for making your policy so clear." Mina was studying Drex carefully, her quick mind already connecting dots. "You're Drex Orion," she said, "the owner of Stellar Eats." Drex raised an eyebrow ridge. "I am. And you are trespassing on my establishment." "We'll leave," Sora said, dignity in every word. "But know this, what happened here tonight was wrong." As security guards approached, Jun led his family back toward the landing pad. Todd was shaking with rage, and Mina's eyes burned with a cold fire. "How can they do that?" Ta demanded once they were out of earshot. "Isn't that illegal?" "Technically, yes," Mina said. "The Galactic Alliance has anti-discrimination laws, but they're rarely enforced when it comes to humans, especially against private businesses." Sora looked at her husband. In 20 years of marriage, she knew exactly what he was thinking. "Jun," she said softly, "what are you planning?" Jun watched as another shuttle arrived, depositing more wealthy aliens at the restaurant entrance. His eyes followed a server carrying a tray of colorful drinks to a table by the window, one of the supposedly reserved tables that had been denied to them. "Do you remember what my grandfather used to say?" Jun asked his family. "When they shut the door, buy the house," Tai quoted. Jun nodded. "Exactly. They think humans are primitive. They think we're weak because our skin is dark. They think we can be humiliated and will just walk away." He looked at each member of his family. "But they don't know the Kims." "What are you suggesting?" Sora asked, though the gleam in her eyes suggested she already knew. "I'm suggesting we teach Mr. Drexorian and his Stellar Eats a lesson they will never forget," Jun said. "Mina, what do you know about their business structure?" Mina, who had been researching the restaurant chain for a school project, didn't hesitate. "Publicly traded on the Galactic Exchange. Drex owns about 40% of the shares. They've expanded too quickly, and rumors say they're cash poor despite their exclusive image." "Perfect," Jun said, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Let's go back to our ship. We have calls to make." As they walked to their shuttle, Tai was still fuming. "I wanted to punch that smug look off their faces." "Violence solves nothing," Jun said. "Do you know what does solve problems in this galaxy? Money, influence, power." He looked back at the gleaming restaurant against the night sky. "And patience." Sora linked her arm through her husband's. "So instead of dining at Stellar Eats tonight, we're going to buy it," Jun finished. The Kim family's shuttle lifted off from Nova Prime. But they weren't leaving. They were just getting started. On the flight back to their ship, The underscore perseverance underscore. Jun was already making calls to business associates across human space. Sora was reviewing their investment portfolio, identifying assets they could liquidate quickly. Mina was pulling up every piece of financial data on Stellar each she could find in the public records. Even Tai, his anger now channeled into determination, was listing the names of every human family they knew who had faced similar discrimination. The stars shone brightly through the shuttle windows, but the Kim family's eyes were fixed on the future, a future where no one would dare tell humans they didn't belong. The Kim family's ship, the underscore perseverance underscore, hung in orbit around Nova Prime. Unlike the flashy pleasure yachts of the wealthy, the underscore perseverance underscore was built for business. It was large enough to house the family comfortably, but small enough to be run by just the four of them when needed. In the ship's main room, Jun had turned the large central table into a command center. Screens floated above the surface, showing news feeds, stock prices, and company records. "Okay," Jun said, looking at his family. "If we're going to do this, we need to know everything about Stellar Eats, their strengths, their weaknesses, and most importantly, their finances." Mina was already working, her fingers dancing across 3 different screens. "I've downloaded their public financial reports for the last 5 years," she said. "On the surface, they look successful. Revenue has grown by 25% each year as they've opened new locations." "But," Sora asked, knowing her daughter well enough to hear the doubt in her voice. "But their profit margins are shrinking," Mina continued, zooming in on a chart. "They've been spending huge amounts on new restaurant locations in prime real estate areas. The newest spots aren't making enough money yet to cover their costs." Ta, who had been quiet since they left the restaurant, looked up with interest. "So they look rich, but actually need money." "Exactly," Mina said with a smile at her brother. "They're what we call cash poor. They have lots of assets, buildings, equipment, fancy decorations, but not much actual money to spend." June nodded thoughtfully. "That gives us an opening. But before we move forward, we need to know if what happened to us is common or if it was just bad luck." "I can help with that," Ta said, surprising everyone. The youngest Kim was usually more interested in sports than business. "I'll check social media and review sites. If other humans have had similar experiences, they've probably posted about it." "Good thinking," Sora said proudly. "I'll contact our friends in the shipping business. Many of them have visited Nova Prime. And I'll speak with our lawyers," June added. "I want to know exactly what laws were broken tonight and what legal options we might have." The family broke apart to begin their tasks. Hours passed as they dug deeper into the story of Stellar Eats. Tai was the first to report back. His normally cheerful face was serious. "It's not just us," he said, pulling up dozens of posts from various social media platforms. "I found hundreds of complaints from humans, especially those with darker skin. Look at this one from last month. Made reservation weeks ago at Stellar Eats. Showed up, and suddenly they couldn't find it. Noticed the only humans inside were light-skinned." He scrolled to another post. "And this one. Server at Stellar Eats barely looked at us. Food took twice as long as the table next to us. When we complained, manager suggested we might be more comfortable at a human restaurant." June looked grim. "So there's a pattern." "A clear one," Ta confirmed. "And it gets worse at the higher-end locations. The restaurants in more diverse areas aren't as bad, but the flagship spots like the one on Nova Prime are the worst." Mina had been listening while continuing her own research. "That matches what I'm finding," she said. "Their financial reports show they make most of their money from wealthy alien clients. They seem to be positioning themselves as exclusive, and part of that exclusivity means keeping humans out, especially black humans." Sora entered the room, having just finished a series of calls. "Our network confirms it," she said. Li Chen from Orion Express was told they were closed for a private event, but when he walked by later, the restaurant was half empty. Then Diokas couldn't even get a reservation despite trying 6 months in advance. Jun was pacing now, his mind working quickly. So it's not just illegal, it's a company-wide policy. That means the problem starts at the top. With Drex, Minna said, pulling up an image of the green-skinned Orion owner. I've been researching him. He started Stellar Eats 10 years ago with money from his family. The first restaurants were huge successes, which is why he expanded so quickly. But, Jun prompted, sensing there was more. But Drex has expensive tastes. Minna continued. He owns homes on 7 different planets. He collects rare art. And lately, he's been investing in other businesses that aren't doing well. 3 failed ventures in the last 2 years. Ta whistled. So he needs money too. More importantly, Minna said, he owns 40% of Stellar Eats shares. The next largest shareholder only has 8%. If someone could buy Drex's shares, they'd control the company. Sora finished, looking at her husband. Jun stopped pacing and smiled slowly. Now we're getting somewhere. Minna, what's the current stock price? Minna pulled up the information. 87 credits per share. The company has 10 million shares total, so Drex's 40% is worth about 348 million credits. Tay's eyes widened. We don't have that kind of money. No, Jun agreed. But we don't need to buy all of it at once, and we don't need to do it alone. Over the next 3 days, the Kim family barely slept. They were too busy building their plan. Sora contacted their financial partners across human space, explaining their idea without revealing the personal insult that had sparked it. Many were eager to help, having faced similar discrimination themselves, or simply seeing a good business opportunity. Lin Trading will invest 50 million credits, Sora reported after one call. The Ndioka Group is in for 30 million, and the Earth Heritage Fund is considering a major investment. Meanwhile, Jun was meeting with Han, his older brother and a financial expert who lived on Earth. Though separated by light years, their connection remained strong. Han's hologram sat at the table with them, looking through the data Minna had gathered. It's a solid company with a bad culture, Han said. If you change the leadership and policies, it could be even more successful. Right now, they're ignoring a huge market segment, humans. Exactly what I was thinking, Jun said. But how do we approach Drex? He clearly doesn't respect humans. He won't sell to us directly. Han tapped his chin thoughtfully. We create shell companies, hide our involvement behind layers of corporate entities, make it look like the offer is coming from a consortium of Venlaxian and Arcturian investors. Can we do that? Tai asked. It's perfectly legal, Han assured him. Companies do it all the time for all sorts of reasons. The key is finding the right front person. Minna, who had been quiet, suddenly looked up from her screen. I think I found our way in, she said. Drex just announced a new venture, a luxury resort on Proxima B. The construction costs are estimated at 200 million credits. Where is he getting that money? Jun studied the report Minna had found. Good question. Based on everything we've learned, he doesn't have that kind of cash available. So he needs money quickly, Sora said. That makes our timing perfect. There's more, Minna added. Stellar Eats' board of directors has 12 members. Drex controls 5 seats directly. 3 more usually vote with him. But the other 4 have been pushing for more inclusive policies, arguing that the anti-human stance is hurting business in the long run. Jun nodded slowly, a plan forming in his mind. So we need to approach those 4 board members first. Show them we share their vision. Then make Drex an offer he can't refuse for his shares. And if he does refuse? Tai asked. Jun looked at his son. Everyone has a price, Ta. We just need to find Drex. Sora, who had been studying the financial projections, looked up. We'll need to move quickly. The longer we wait, the more likely someone else will see the same opportunity we see. Agreed, Jun said. Han, can you be here within a week? We'll need you to help set up the shell companies and make the approaches. Han's hologram nodded. I'll take the next fast ship. See you in 5 days. As Han's image disappeared, the family gathered around the table, looking at the mass of information they had gathered. What had started as an emotional response to an insult had become a solid business plan. Are we really doing this? Ty asked, a mix of excitement and nervousness in his voice. June looked at each member of his family. Yes, we are, but not for revenge. We're doing this because it's good business and because it's right. Stellar Eats should be a place where everyone is welcome. Sora squeezed her husband's hand. And the fact that we'll get to see Drex's face when he realizes who bought his company, that's just a bonus. For the first time since they'd been turned away from the restaurant, the whole family laughed together. Minna raised a mock toast with her water glass. To the future owners of Stellar Eats. To justice through good business, June added. Outside the ship's viewport, Nova Prime glowed against the blackness of space. Somewhere on that planet, Drex and Lorix were going about their day, unaware that their lives were about to change forever. The _Perseverance lived up to its name as the Kim family prepared for the next phase of their plan. 1 week later, the Kim family checked into the Grand Nebula Hotel on Nova Prime. The hotel was directly across from Stellar Eats, giving them a perfect view of the restaurant that had humiliated them. This time, they weren't alone. Han Kim, June's older brother, had arrived from Earth as promised. Their suite took up half of the top floor of the hotel. It cost more for one night than most people made in a month, but June knew appearances mattered in this game they were playing. Everything is ready, Han said as they gathered in the suite's main room. Unlike his younger brother, Han had spent his career in finance rather than shipping. He was slightly shorter than June, but carried himself with the same quiet confidence. The shell companies are established, Han continued, bringing up holographic displays showing complex corporate structures. From the outside, it appears that a group of Venlaxian investors is making the moves. No connection to us is visible. Sora nodded in approval. She wore an elegant blue dress that highlighted her dark skin. Our financial partners have transferred the promised funds to the holding accounts. We have access to 380 million credits. That should be enough to buy Drex's shares and more, Minna said. She had grown up in the past week, her usual student clothes replaced by a professional business suit. Based on our research, we'll need to offer him at least 30% above market value to make it tempting enough. Ta, who had been looking out the window at Stellar Eats, turned back to his family. What's stopping him from just taking our money and then backing out somehow? Good question, Jun said with pride. His son was thinking like a businessman now. That's why we're not just relying on Drex. We've been quietly buying shares on the open market through our shell companies. How many do we have now, Minna? Mina checked her tablet. Nearly 12% of the company. Not enough for control, but enough to have influence. And we've made contact with the 4 board members who oppose Drex's policies. Han added. They're cautiously interested in our vision for the company. June walked to the center of the room. Now it's time to put the pieces together. Han and I will approach Drex's representatives tomorrow, making our offer for his shares. Sora, you'll meet with the board members who might support us. Mina and Tai, your job is the public relations angle. PR. Tai asked, looking confused. What does that mean for us? Mina smiled at her brother. It means we're going to make sure that everyone knows about Stellar Eats' discrimination problems. I've prepared reports for major news outlets about their anti-human policies. You've collected hundreds of testimonials from people who were treated badly. Together, we're going to create pressure from the outside while Mom, Dad, and Uncle Han work from the inside. That's kind of genius, Ta said, looking at his sister with new respect. It's business, Minna replied with a shrug, but she was clearly pleased. The next morning, June and Han entered the offices of Nova Prime's most prestigious law firm. They wore expensive suits made from earth silk, their shoes polished to a mirror shine. No one looking at them would guess they had been denied service at a restaurant just days ago. The receptionist, a tall Arcturian female, looked up as they entered. For a moment, Jum saw surprise in her silver eyes, quickly hidden behind professional politeness. "May I help you?" she asked. "We have an appointment with Zarn Vex," Han said smoothly, representing Centauri Ventures. Centauri Ventures was one of their shell companies, supposedly owned by wealthy Venlaxians. Zarn Vex was Drex's personal lawyer and financial advisor. The receptionist checked her screen. "Yes, I see the appointment. Please follow me." She led them to a large conference room with a view of the city. Zarn Vex was already waiting. The Orion lawyer had the same green skin as Drex, but lacked the jewelry and flashy clothes. He wore a simple gray suit and had data screens floating around him. "Gentlemen," Zarn said, rising to greet them. If he was surprised to see humans representing a Venlaxian company, he hid it well. "Please, sit down. How can I help Centauri Ventures today?" Jum let Han take the lead, as they had planned. Han was more experienced in these kinds of negotiations. "Mr. Vex," Han began, "we represent investors who are interested in acquiring a significant stake in Stellar Eats. Specifically, we want to make an offer for Mr. Drex's shares." Zarn's face remained neutral, but one of his eyebrows raised slightly. "I see. And why would my client be interested in selling his shares in a very successful business?" Han smiled. "Because we're prepared to offer a premium price, 30% above current market value. That would be approximately 452 million credits for his 40% stake." Now both of Zarn's eyebrows went up. "That's a generous offer. May I ask why your clients are willing to pay so much?" "Our investors see untapped potential in the Stellar Eats brand," Jum said, speaking for the first time. "They believe that with some changes to the current business model, profits could be significantly increased." "Changes?" Zarn asked, his voice suddenly cautious. "Nothing dramatic," Han assured him. "Just some adjustments to marketing strategies, target demographics, that sort of thing." Zarn studied them for a long moment. "I'll need to present this offer to my client, of course. But I should warn you, Mr. Drex is very attached to Stellar Eats. It's his creation." "We understand," Jun said. "But we also understand that Mr. Drex has a new project that requires significant capital. A luxury resort on Proxima B, I believe." Zarn's eyes narrowed slightly. "You seem well informed." "We believe in doing our homework," Han said with a smile. "Please convey our offer to Mr. Drex. We'll need an answer within 3 days. After that, the offer expires." As Jun and Han left the law offices, Jum's communicator buzzed. It was Sora. "How did it go with the board members?" Jun asked. "Better than expected," Sora replied. "2 of them are fully on board with our vision. They're tired of Drex's leadership and worried about the company's finances. The other 2 are cautious but interested." "Good," Jun said. "And the kids?" "See for yourself," Sora said, sending a link to his device. Jun opened it to find a news article that had just been published. "Stellar EETs, Galactic Tuizini with a side of DIC Rari Mine. The article featured testimonials from dozens of humans who had been turned away or treated poorly at Stellar Eats restaurants. There were statistics showing how few dark-skinned humans ever got reservations at the high-end locations. "Mina and Tai did this?" Jun asked, impressed. "They worked all night on it," Sora confirmed. "And they've got more stories ready to release tomorrow and the next day." By the time Jun and Han returned to the hotel suite, 3 more news outlets had picked up the story. Social media was buzzing with people sharing their own experiences at Stellar Eats. The hashtag StellarBigots was trending across human space. "This is moving faster than we expected," Han said as they watched the coverage. Ta grinned. Once people had a chance to share their stories, it just took off. Turns out lots of humans have wanted to talk about this for a long time. Mina was monitoring the stock price. Stellar Eats shares are down 8% already. If this continues, Drex might be more motivated to sell. 2 days passed. The negative publicity continued to grow. Stellar Eats share price fell further. Some alien customers were canceling their reservations, not wanting to be associated with the controversy. On the morning of the third day, Jum's communicator buzzed. It was Zarnvex. "Mr. Kim," the lawyer said, his voice carefully controlled. "Mr. Drex has considered your offer and wishes to discuss it in person. Would you be available for a meeting this afternoon?" "Of course," Jum said, trying to keep the triumph out of his voice. "We'd be happy to meet Mr. Drex." As he ended the call, Jum looked at his family. "We're in the final phase now. Drex wants to meet. Do you think he'll sell?" Tai asked anxiously. Jum nodded. The negative publicity, the falling stock price, his need for cash for his new resort. "Yes, I think he'll sell. But he'll try to get more money from us first." "How high are we willing to go?" Sora asked. "Our limit is 500 million, Han reminded them. "But let's try to keep it under 480 if possible." That afternoon, Jun and Han entered the private dining room at the top of Stellar Eats. Drex was waiting for them, along with Zarnvex. The Orion owner didn't look happy. His yellow eyes were clouded with stress, and he seemed to have lost some of his earlier arrogance. "Gentlemen," Drex said as they sat down, "let's get straight to the point. Why is a human-led group so interested in my restaurant chain?" So he had figured out that Centauri Ventures wasn't really Venlaxian-owned. Jun wasn't surprised. Drex wasn't stupid, just prejudiced. "Business is business," Han said simply. "We see a good investment opportunity. And all this negative publicity about how my restaurants treat humans." Drex asked, "I suppose that's just a coincidence." "The truth often comes out at convenient times," Jun replied calmly. Drex stared at them for a long moment, then sighed. "Your offer is too low. I want 500 million. Jun and Han exchanged a glance. They had expected this. 475 million is our final offer," Han said. "And we need an answer today." Drex looked at Zarn, who nodded slightly. "Fine," Drex said bitterly. 475 million. But I want it done quickly and quietly. "Of course," Jun said, offering his hand to shake. "You have a deal." As they shook hands, Jun couldn't help but wonder if Drex would remember him from that night when he'd been turned away from this very restaurant. Probably not. To people like Drex, all humans looked the same, especially the ones with dark skin. But soon, Drex would remember the name Kim. The whole galaxy would. 1 month had passed since the deal with Drex was signed. The Kim family had been busy every day, working behind the scenes to prepare for this moment. Tonight, Stellar Eats on Nova Prime was closed for a special private event. The sign on the door said the restaurant would reopen tomorrow under new management. Inside, staff hurried about, making final preparations. New menus were placed on tables. New uniforms were distributed to the servers. A small stage had been set up in the center of the main dining room. Lorix, the Arcturian host who had turned the Kims away that fateful night, straightened his new uniform nervously. He had been surprised to keep his job when the ownership changed. The new management had required him to attend special training sessions about treating all customers with respect, but they hadn't fired him as he had feared. "Are you ready?" a human manager asked, approaching Lorix. "The guests will arrive in 30 minutes. "Yes, sir," Lorix replied, still getting used to having a human as his boss. "The staff knows what to do." "Good," the manager said. "Remember, tonight is very important. Some of the most influential people in 12 star systems will be here." As the manager walked away, Lorix checked the reservation list one more time. The names represented power and wealth from across the galaxy, celebrities, politicians, business leaders of all species. But unlike in the past, there were many human names on the list too, including some with notes indicating they had been denied service under the previous ownership. At precisely 8 o'clock, the doors opened. Guests began to arrive. Arcturians in flowing robes, Venlaxians floating slightly above the floor, Orions with their green skin and yellow eyes, and humans of all colors and backgrounds. For the first time, Stellar Eats truly looked like the diverse galaxy it served. Lorix greeted each guest with the same respectful bow, regardless of their species or skin color. Inside, he still felt uncomfortable around some of the humans, especially those with darker skin, but he was learning. The training sessions had helped him understand his own prejudices better. As the restaurant filled, excitement grew. Everyone knew something special was planned for tonight, but few knew exactly what. Rumors had spread about the identity of the new owners, but nothing had been confirmed. At 9 o'clock, the lights dimmed slightly, and a soft chime rang through the restaurant. Conversations quieted as all eyes turned to the small stage. A human man walked onto the stage. He was tall, with dark brown skin and short black hair sprinkled with gray. He wore an elegant suit that combined Earth and Venlaxian styles. Something about him seemed familiar to Lorix, but the host couldn't quite place where he'd seen him before. "Good evening, everyone," the man said, his voice warm but commanding. "My name is Jum Kim, my family, and I would like to welcome you to the new Stellar Eats." Sora, Mina, and Ta joined Jum on the stage. They stood proudly beside him, dressed in equally impressive outfits that blended Earth and alien fashions. "Some of you may recognize us," Jum continued. "4 months ago, my family and I were denied service at this very restaurant." Lorix felt his silver skin turn pale. Now he remembered. These were the humans he had turned away. He wanted to hide, but he forced himself to stand still and face what was coming. "We were told there were no tables available, despite having a reservation," Jun said, his eyes briefly meeting Lorix across the room. "We were made to feel unwelcome because of our appearance, because of our human heritage, because of the color of our skin." A murmur ran through the crowd. Many of the guests looked uncomfortable, especially those who had frequently dined at Stellar Eats in the past. "Today," Jun continued, "we stand before you as the new owners of not just this restaurant, but the entire Stellar Eats chain across all 12 systems." Gasps filled the room. Even those who had heard rumors seemed shocked to have them confirmed so directly. "But we are not here for revenge," Jun said, his voice softening. "We are here to build bridges between species, between cultures. We believe food brings people together, and Stellar Eats will now be a place where all are welcome." Sora stepped forward. "We have spent the past month reviewing every aspect of this business. We found much to admire: talented chefs, innovative recipes, beautiful locations. But we also found policies that divided rather than united." Mina moved to stand beside her mother. "Starting today, Stellar Eats will implement new hiring practices. We aim to have staff from every member species of the Galactic Alliance. Our restaurants should reflect the diversity of our customers." Todd joined them, looking more confident than ever before. "We're also introducing new menu items that celebrate the best of human cuisine alongside the galactic favorites you already love. Food is a universal language that everyone understands." As the Kim family spoke, Lorix watched the crowd's reaction. At first, there had been shock, then discomfort, but now he saw something else: interest, respect, and even excitement. The Kims weren't speaking with anger or bitterness. They were passionate about making something better. After the speeches, the new menu was served. Dishes from Earth appeared alongside favorites from other worlds. The human dishes highlighted foods from different Earth cultures: spicy curries, savory stews, sweet desserts from regions across the planet. Lorix was assigned to serve a table of mixed species: 2 Arcturians, a Venlaxian, and 3 humans with various skin tones. As he approached with their first course, he felt nervous. "Good evening," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "May I present our new appetizer selection?" One of the humans, a woman with dark brown skin like the Kim family, looked up at him. "Aren't you the host who was here a few months ago?" The one who turned the Kims away. Lorix felt his heart sink. Yes, he admitted. That was me. He expected anger, but the woman nodded thoughtfully. And they kept you on staff. They did, Lorix said, still surprised by this himself. Mr. Kim said everyone deserves a chance to learn and grow. The woman smiled slightly. Interesting. Well, let's see if the food is as good as the philosophy. As the evening progressed, Jum Kim moved from table to table, greeting guests and listening to their feedback. When he reached Lorix, the Arcturian prepared himself for dismissal. Mr. Kim, Lorix said, bowing his head, I want to apologize for how I treated you and your family. June studied him for a moment. Do you understand why what you did was wrong? I do now, Lorix said honestly. The training helped me see my own prejudices. I never thought of myself as bigoted, but I was. That's why we kept you on, June explained. Firing you would have been easy, but it wouldn't have changed anything. The real victory isn't in punishment, but in changing minds and hearts. By the end of the night, Stellar Eats had reservations booked solid for the next 6 months. The social media channels were buzzing with positive reviews of the new menu and the inclusive atmosphere. 1 year later, the Kim family gathered in June's office at Stellar Eats headquarters on Nova Prime. Through the large window, ships from across the galaxy arrived and departed, carrying people of all species. The quarterly reports are in, Minna said, pulling up holographic charts. Profits are up 40% across all locations. We've opened 5 new restaurants, and they're all exceeding projections. The Earth-inspired dishes are the most popular items on the menu, Tai added with pride, especially at the restaurants in predominantly alien sectors. Sora smiled at her husband. Not bad for a family that couldn't even get a table a year ago. June looked out at the stars. My grandfather would be proud. He always said success was the best answer to prejudice. On the wall behind his desk hung a simple framed note. It contained the words his grandfather had often repeated, the words that had guided the Kim family through their darkest moment. When they shut the door, buy the house. The Kim family had done more than buy a house. They had opened its doors to everyone. From the dining room below, the sounds of a busy restaurant drifted up. The clinking of glasses, the murmur of conversation in dozens of languages, and most importantly, laughter. Human laughter, Arcturian laughter, then Laxian laughter, Orion laughter, all blending together in the universal sound of people enjoying themselves and each other's company. Stellar Eats had become what it always should have been, a place where the stars brought people together rather than keeping them apart. And it had all started because someone had told the Kim family they didn't belong.